Sorry, the mouse just stopped working. Facial features were adjusted to make her eyes more symmetrical and her cheekbones smaller and more prominent. The model's face was also thinned, implying a smaller WHR and BMI.
As we just saw, imagery manipulation is widely affected by perception, which is our next topic. What does perception mean? Perception has to do with how our brain responds to the various stimuli we are exposed to. According to Dr. Perner, there are 4 factors that influence perception. These factors, exposure, degree of attention, interpretation, and relevance, all contribute to make a perception of something. Exposure and degree of attention go hand in hand with each other. Exposure is the extent to which we encounter a stimulus, and degree of attention has to do with how our stimulus is consciously processed. An individual may have constant exposure to advertisements, but only when his attention level rises and his interest level rises in a particular advertisement will he start paying deliberate attention to that ad. Interpretation affects perception because it involves how much sense is made of a particular stimulus. In this picture, you see a red aluminum can. What would most of you categorize it as? Does perhaps a red Coke can come into mind? Well, that's how your interpretation would probably affect your perception. Relevance has to do with pleasant and unpleasant ads. If an advertisement is pleasant, the consumer will take great notice of it immediately and wouldn't mind watching it again. However, if the advertisement is unpleasant, then the consumer will avoid watching it at all costs. Halo effect has to do with linking judgment with perception. Thorndike explains the halo effect as an extension of an overall impression of a person or one particular outstanding trait to influence the total judgment of that person. The effect is to evaluate an individual high on many traits because of a belief that the individual is high on one trait. If a person is assumed to be physically attractive, he will also be presumed to have other positive attributes such as intelligence, popularity, and success. It is important to note that the halo effect is not only restricted to people, it can extend to objects as well. Based on an analysis performed in 2008, Mac usage jumped from 1.1% in October 2006 to 3.6% a year later and 4.5% in June 2008, as can be seen from the table and graph above. The success, branding, and sales of iPod was used by advertisers to indirectly increase the sale of other Apple products such as Mac. All in all, perception makes a significant contribution to a particular lifestyle and in creating an image for something. That's why advertisers use it so frequently to appeal to the society.
Advertisers also utilize aspects of classical conditioning in their marketing techniques. Classical conditioning is a form of associative learning. There are 4 parts to this associative learning process: the unconditioned stimulus, which is a neutral action, an unconditioned response, which is a natural innate reaction, a conditioned stimulus, which is a stimulus of some significance, and a conditioned response, which is an expected reaction to a given stimulus. Through a repeated pairing of the unconditioned stimulus and the conditioned stimulus, the observer will eventually associate the 2 stimuli and have a behavioral response referred to as a conditioned stimulus. Ivan Pavlov demonstrated the association through the observation of dogs' digestive tract. In his experiment, the unconditioned stimulus was presentation of meat at mealtime, and the unconditioned response was a dog's salivation at the sight of food. A conditioned stimulus was added, and a bell was rung to indicate mealtime. Through a repeated pairing of the presentation of food and the sound of the bell, eventually the dogs had a conditioned response to salivate at the sound of the bell and not at the sight of food. How do advertisers use this technique? Take, for example, this Michelin tire ad. Most consumers spontaneously associate positive and happy feelings with a cute baby. Pair a cute baby enough times with the tire, and eventually the tire will be associated with those positive and happy feelings. These advertising techniques have been so successful that consumers are unaware to the extent that products have become associated with our perception of happiness. Professor John Story at the University of St. Thomas conducted an experiment to test brand loyalty of Wrangler jeans with devout Wrangler jean consumers. Participants were divided into two groups. One group was given jeans with the Wrangler label, and the second group was given the same jeans with all the labels removed. Each group was asked to critique the same jeans based on style, comfort, fit, and quality. Although both groups were given the same identical pair of jeans, participants with the brand labeled jeans said that everything ranked higher in all categories compared to those in the other group. This evidences that consumers see a product in light of successful marketing campaigns and not necessarily because of the product itself. To fully understand techniques used by advertisers, Ms. Ali will analyze this Miracle Whip commercial.
Don't go unnoticed. Don't blend in. Don't be ordinary, boring, or bland. In other words, don't be so mayo. We are our own unique one-of-a-kind flavor. We are Miracle Whip, and we will not tone it down.
This Miracle Whip commercial uses various techniques to appeal to three of Maslow's needs. The product being food in and of itself helps with giving attention to the physical need of food. We also see physically and socially attractive models that are muscular, slender, and built and appealing to look at. Esteem needs show actors that are self-confident and competent. Social needs of promoting being a part of a group, but also at the same time being an individual, are also depicted. Through these appeals, the viewer is given the perception of being cool, fashionable, and fun. All these positive terms are associated with the actors in the commercial, which makes Miracle Whip more desirable and exciting, thus tying back to conditioning. Thus, using all these techniques we have discussed, it is shown that advertisers appeal to human needs and sell us not only a product, but a lifestyle.